With the new 12-team playoff in college football, everyone's been saying you no longer can be eliminated after week 1. Well, Florida State has proven that's not the case because after week 1 of the college football season, the Seminoles have officially been eliminated from college football playoff contention. I mean, we haven't even gotten to week 2 yet, and the 2024 season is already a dumpster fire for Florida State. Before we get to today's video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. If you're watching this video, odds are you love college football, and odds are you aren't subscribed to my channel, so make sure to subscribe to one of the best college football communities here on YouTube. So Florida State kicked off their season in week 0, losing to Georgia Tech in Dublin by only 3 points. Now, Georgia Tech at least is a pretty decent team, at least I would say, so losing by 3 to them isn't all that bad, but considering Florida State was ranked number 10 to begin the season, they were a heavy favorite, they were one of the favorites to win the ACC, and potentially a favorite to reach the college football playoff. Losing that game in week 0 certainly isn't ideal, but luckily for them, they had a really nice bounce back game the week later in week 1 as they were set to host Boston College, who they were a 17-point favorite against. It should be an easy win. Florida State picks up a victory, and their season is right back on track. Instead, their season is already over as they fell to the Eagles 28-13. This game was never really close outside of the first quarter when it ended 0-0. Boston College dominated on both sides of the ball, and in the second half, they barely even needed to throw it. I mean, I don't even know where to begin with Florida State because this team, like I mentioned earlier, is a complete dumpster fire. I guess we'll start with quarterback DJ Uiagalelei. After spending time at Clemson, he transferred to Oregon State, and then he transferred to Florida State this offseason. Now, I've always been kinda high on DJ because we've seen him show flashes of being a really good quarterback, but he's just never been consistent. But I thought him going to Florida State was a great move, and I thought he would thrive there. Well, it's been only 2 games, and it looks like it's going to be a long season for him. He was horrible last night as he completed only 50% of his passes. I mean, he was 21 of 42, and honestly, he could have finished the game with more incompletions. Now, his wide receivers did have a lot of drops, but there were a number of plays where DJ Uiagalelei just completely missed a wide open guy. He did throw for 270 yards and had a touchdown, but a lot of those numbers were padded stats in garbage time when the game was already out of reach. He had a costly interception that nearly turned into a pick 6 as well. Now, it's not entirely his fault because if you did watch the game, his offensive line and his receivers weren't giving him that much help, but there were still a number of plays that he just straight up did not make. If he's going to play the way he's played these last 2 games, I really don't know how many wins Florida State is going to finish with. I talked about Florida State's offensive line being really bad. Well, the running game couldn't do anything last night either. Overall as a team, Florida State ran for only 21 yards, averaging only 1.3 yards per attempt. Now I get it, they didn't really need to run the ball because they were trailing for most of the game, but they couldn't establish the run at all. Also, their defense, their defense is an absolute joke at the moment as well. In the second half, Boston College only had 4 yards through the air. The rest was entirely on the ground. For the game, Boston College ran for 260 yards, averaging more than 5 yards an attempt. Looking at this, I'm actually pretty surprised they were only averaging 5 yards an attempt because it seemed like every time Boston College ran the ball, they were getting a first down or well more than 5 yards. I mean, they were just dominating this defensive line the entire game. Now, no disrespect to Boston College, but they were a 17-point underdog for a reason. They didn't really have any expectations in the ACC this year, but yet they ran and dominated all over Florida State. Now, I don't follow Florida State too closely, so I couldn't tell you everything there is to know about this team, but personally, I'm very shocked that we've seen this team completely collapse after being one of the better teams in all of college football last year. I talked about this numerous times last year, and I'll just say this again. I don't think they should have been a playoff team after the Jordan Travis injury, and that clearly showed in their bowl game against Georgia. But as we saw when they did have Jordan Travis, this was a really good team that was worthy of being a top 10 team in all of college football. Now, I do understand that Florida State lost talent to the NFL draft, but they also added talent from the transfer portal, and they still already had a really talented team. I have no idea how you lose to Georgia Tech and Boston College in back-to-back weeks. Not only that, you don't really look good in either game as well. Maybe Georgia Tech and Boston College are going to be a lot better than we're expecting, and at the end of the year, these losses aren't going to look too horrible, but when you're a 17-point favorite at home and you lose by 15 points, yeah, there's a lot to be concerned and worried about. Following last night's game, here's what Mike Norvell had to say. "I'm sick to how the season started. I apologize to the fans. I apologize to everybody associated with the program. That was extremely disappointing. All phases, we just weren't good." I'm going to share a bunch of fun tweets that I found in regards to Florida State from last night. Ranked teams are 18-2 so far this season versus unranked teams. Florida State is 0-2 and everybody else is 18-0. Florida State becomes the 4th AP top 10 ranked team to start 0-2 in the last 10 seasons. The others, 2022 Notre Dame, 2020 Penn State, and 2017 Florida State. Boston College finished with 263 yards rushing. Florida State ran for 21 yards. Florida State had 21 rushing yards tonight, fewest for Florida State in a game since the 2018 team had negative 21 rushing yards against Clemson. Florida State really spent their entire offseason complaining and suing and forgot to practice any football. The good thing about an expanded playoff is that your team can't be eliminated after week 1. Florida State went out and proved the haters wrong. It has not helped Florida State that both of its first 2 games were the only game on television in its window. We all can see this. And finally, Florida State is just the 3rd FBS team in the last 45 years to lose its first 2 games of the season as double-digit favorites. So yeah, like I kind of mentioned earlier, the fact that Florida State was heavily favored in both these games and lost, that is really concerning. Looking at Florida State's remaining schedule, there are going to be a lot more losses likely on their schedule, and there are people that are saying they might not even make it to a bowl game. Now, I'm not going to be that bold and say Florida State isn't going to make it to 6 wins, but when looking at the remaining schedule, there are a number of difficult games there. Not to mention some of the games you expect them to win. Who knows what Florida State team we're going to be seeing, and maybe they drop those games as well. I thought this was a great excerpt from an article this morning on Florida State's SB Nation page. Even more, in a season that was to serve as both celebration and validation, the connection with the fans is broken. The same group that turned Winston-Salem into a Florida State home game traveled to Charlotte in the pouring rain and then crossed the pond to cheer on the Noles, turned on DJ Uiagalelei and the offense when the game was technically still within reach. Unable to watch the slow suffocation of the hope that a new season brings, fans started to find the exits early in the second half, eventually rendering the reduced capacity Doak Campbell Stadium basically empty as the final seconds ticked away. For the last few months, the Seminoles constantly have found themselves in the news for all the wrong reasons. They became a national storyline after missing out on the playoff last year with the 60-point loss to Georgia following the team into the offseason. Suing the ACC brought more attention and dreams of schadenfreude from outside parties, while redoing the stadium brought more noise, both physically and amongst fans disagreeing with the decision. Norvell's 2024 team had the chance to catapult the Seminoles into the next phase of college football, proving that last year's team was not a fluke, shutting down snide remarks from the peanut gallery at large and solidifying that Florida State deserves consideration amongst the best in college football, on the field and off it. Instead, just 3 days into September, they do not look like a team that can make a bowl game. Yeah, I thought that perfectly summed up everything going on with Florida State, everything that's wrong with the program right now, and yeah, again, what a dumpster fire to begin the season. I mean, it really is remarkable that with the playoff expanding to 12 teams, every team now had 2 losses to spare, maybe even a third depending on how things shape out. So pretty much every team in college football is still in the playoff discussion, with the exception of Florida State, because we're not even into week 2 yet, and they're already 0-2 on the season. Absolutely brutal. The epitome of brutality. Well, that wraps it up for today's video. What are your thoughts on Florida State and their awful start to the season? Do you think this team has what it takes to make it to a bowl game, or do you think this team is truly trash and they're not going to finish the season with 6 wins? Whatever your thoughts are on Florida State and what you think is going wrong with this team, let me know in the comment section down below. Before you leave, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. I'm posting college football videos every day during the season, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, don't forget to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video and my channel with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.